Great. So welcome to the social selling track. Today, as you know, there's a variety of tracks that we're doing. And the one I personally am most excited about is obviously the social selling one. We're excited to add social selling as a key new track to Finance Connect this year for the first time. So I wanted to give you guys a quick tour of how we're going to use the time this afternoon, and then go from there. So Sachin Reiki, met me this morning, head of product for sales solutions, is going to kick it off with Stephen Kaplan, who you'll meet in a moment, who's on my product team. We're going to talk about the future of social selling and actually give you guys a demo of the Sales Navigator solution, which is our flagship product that we have out in market today. Then Jamie Brill, our head of the sales solutions business for the financial services sector, is going to come up and actually lead a fireside chat with some great customers of ours, both Guardian and the NBA, and she'll introduce some fantastic folks that'll be actually giving us a much more deeper look at their own personal experiences using social selling within their organizations. We're then going to do a section on social media security and compliance. Obviously, in the financial services sector, it's incredibly important for us to leverage social media in a compliant way. And Devin Redmond from NextGate is going to join us to talk a little bit about those aspects of leveraging social selling within your organization. And finally, we're going to have Craig from the LinkedIn Sales Solutions team join us and lead us through a set of workshops on really thinking through how do we actually drive social selling and make it successful within the organizations. Because we really believe that social selling, when done right, is an initiative that's supported through a whole set of resources to make it really work inside of your organization. All right, great. And so, we're going to try to, we have a small group here, so we're going to try to make this interactive. After the initial discussion, we'll leave time for questions. I was really eager to make sure we focus on the topics that are most interesting to you guys. So definitely think about your questions as we're going through the content, because we definitely want to hear it. Okay, great. So as I mentioned, we're going to start by talking a bit about the future of social selling, as well as how we think about social selling and the solutions that we offer in this space. I'm going to kick it off with kind of an overview of social selling, and then I'm going to ask Stephen Kaplan to join me to give you a demo of actually this full Sales Navigator product, so you guys get a great sense of what the product can do and some of the capabilities that we've created. All right. This morning we talked a lot about what was going on with millennials in terms of trends and changes in the industry. What's important is that those trends actually apply equally well in many ways to the B2B landscape as well. We're seeing a change in the way that CXOs and buyers in B2B transactions actually expect to engage with social media and expect to engage with sales professionals. This stat from IDC shows that 75% of B2B buyers use social media to make purchasing decisions. This is the whole idea that even before a potential buyer engages with you as a brand, they're already engaging with your products and services through social media. Whether it's trying to learn more about your products and services through Google searches, whether it's trying to find references and referrals to how people are using your products and services. We often talk about how far down the journey a buyer often is in their process of learning about your products and services well before they actually ever reach out to a sales rep. And that is an important disruptive change that we've seen in the way that buyers expect to be engaged with. Another stat we talk about is that 95% of B2B decision makers expect new or different insights from sales professionals. So what does this really mean? What this really means is the discovery process is dead. It turns out in this day and age, you cannot ask a potential buyer, a potential customer, can I spend an hour, hour and a half with you to learn about your customer needs, to learn about your business and what products and services you sell? The buyers expect that you've done all that homework, all that research, well before you've even engaged with them. And that's the way that they want to be engaging, because obviously they're busy professionals. And we need to find ways that we can actually, from a social selling perspective, deliver those unique insights and know well before we engage in a conversation with a buyer what their pain points are, what are the ways that our solutions could potentially solve for them. The last trend we see is really about cold calling. I spoke about this morning, that we're seeing far fewer and fewer cold calling attempts really have much effectiveness at all. We talk about the fact that 97% of cold calls go unanswered, and that is dramatically decreasing even further and further. And so instead, what we know works is warm introductions. And this stat shows that we see that buyers are 5 times more likely to engage with sales professionals via warm introduction as opposed to cold outreach. And so this is where we're going into and starting to look at not only the threats to the traditional way of sales, but some of the opportunities that social media is going to open for us in the ways that we think about selling. So let's talk a bit about what is social selling. And so the way that we think about this at LinkedIn is back in, I'd say, about 2011, we started really trying to understand what sales professionals were doing on LinkedIn.com. We were noticing that sales professionals, there was a subset of them that were incredibly savvy at thinking about how to leverage social media to be far more effective with their sales prospecting process. And we spent some time really refining that and trying to understand what it was that they were in fact doing to make them very successful. And from that, we derived the definition of what we now call social selling, which captures the best practices of savvy social sellers on LinkedIn and other social media services, and talks about what they're doing differently that's enabling them to be so successful. Social selling really breaks down into 4 key components. So let's touch on each of these in turn. The first is creating a professional brand. And this is all about establishing your professional profile of record on LinkedIn, as well as making sure it's a complete profile. And the key here is that when done right, that profile is not about helping you to find your next job, but it's about helping you to put your best foot forward to potential clients and buyers. And so what do I mean by that? For example, as a sales rep at IBM, instead of having your headline say that you're an account executive at IBM, maybe instead it says, helping build cloud solutions for our customers. And it's really pointing to what value you can provide to potential buyers. There's numerous ways we enable you to do that on your profile. Things like rich media content that allows you to upload presentations right on your profile. So as people engage with you, as people research you, get to your LinkedIn profile, they're finding insights that they can leverage to really understand you as an individual, your reputation, but also to learn more about your brand and your products and services that you're selling. And so that's where folks are really leveraging social media to actually create a professional brand and do that right. The second is all about finding the right people. The traditional way of going to the gatekeeper within an organization and expecting them to forward your call onto the right person obviously doesn't work anymore. Instead, what you need to be leveraging is the fact that you can pinpoint precisely the right people within an organization that might be interested in your products and services and might even be a decision maker that has budget to actually engage with you on your products and services. And that's what finding the right people is all about, and leveraging the fact that there is social media sites like LinkedIn with over 350 million members that enable you to really understand and find that right person that you're going to engage with. It then goes into engaging with insights. So as we talked about, the discovery process is dead. And instead, you need to be walking into that first interaction that you're having with a potential buyer with insights about how your products and services are going to help solve their business problems. Not the generic pitch, not the template email, but a real understanding of how your products and services can actually solve for their problems. And that's where leveraging the insights available to you about the person, about their company, about their relationships can actually be incredibly powerful in doing so. And you'll see a bit about exactly how we enabled that. And finally, building strong relationships. Building strong relationships is all about leveraging your existing networks, and you'll see Sales Navigator even allows you to extend that to your company network to get warm introductions to potential buyers at organizations. As I mentioned, it's so critical to go in warm because you're going to get a 5x response rate to your initial engagement when there is that trust that happens implicitly through going in warm through a warm introduction. And the savviest social sellers are ones that are doing this time and time again to really change the process of sales. And so you'll see when we talk about this, this is very different than the traditional process. When you think about kind of the traditional sales funnel, which often ends up being a quantity game of looking at, okay, when you're diagnosing a given sales rep, trying to understand how many outbound calls have they made, how many meetings were they able to schedule, how many demos were they able to do, how many were they able to convert to a subsequent meeting, how many opportunities did they open, and so on. That quantity-based approach no longer works. And we believe social selling is really the future of engaging by leveraging social media. What we did with this is we, in fact, came up with a score associated with social selling. And we call that the Social Selling Index. And this is a score that we can actually score the behaviors of every sales professional on LinkedIn and give them a score between 0 and 100 at how successful they are at leveraging these techniques in social selling. And it breaks out that you get a component score for each of the professional brand, finding the right people, engaging with insights, building strong relationships. To give you a flavor, for example, if you have a more complete profile, you're going to have a higher score on creating a professional brand. If you're using our advanced search capabilities to figure out the right person within an organization, you'll have a higher score on finding the right people. And so we've really thought about how do we create the new measures that aren't the quantity-based approach, but are instead the quality and social-based approaches to really measure and understand how successful you're being at adopting social selling. What we then did is actually try to quantify if you're doing this incredibly well, what does that look like and what kind of outcomes do we actually see? And what we see is that we did a survey of over 5,000 sales professionals and asked them a bunch of questions about, in the past quarter, how did you do against your quarterly quota? Did you exceed, meet, or not meet? How did you do in terms of number of opportunities generated? Things like that. We then correlated each of those back to their actual social selling score on Sales Navigator. And what we found were some incredible results. When we looked at social selling leaders, these are the folks at the top 30% of SSI scores, and compared them to social selling laggards, people at the bottom third of SSI scores, we found that on average they generated 45% more opportunities, leaders versus laggards. We also found that they were 51% more likely to hit quota as a leader versus a laggard. And so that we've shown now that these techniques are working to allow people to accelerate sales cycles, to create new opportunities, and ultimately to hit their objectives of exceeding quota. And so this is some incredible research we're excited about, especially given how important we believe social selling is to the industry. We've also done some even more recent research with C9, a research forum. And what we did here is we actually started to look at specific end user results, not by survey, but by actually integrating with their CRM, understanding the opportunities that they opened and closed, and correlating back outcomes to that. And really the net of this is that what we found was people who were using Sales Navigator, which is our flagship social selling solution, were 7 times they generated 7 times more pipeline growth compared to those that weren't using Sales Navigator and were simply using LinkedIn.com. They also generated 11 times more revenue growth. And so again, lots of quantitative results that we've been able to prove where social selling, when done right, using the tool set that we have, does in fact create some amazing outcomes. So I wanted to share a personal story on social selling as well. What you're seeing here is a sales professional, a woman named Carrie at Comcast. Carrie actually joined Comcast when she was 25 with very limited sales experience. And unfortunately, it was a tough battle for her early on. It took her 8 months to close her first deal. Within 1.5 years at Comcast, she was on a performance plan. And things were just not really working out for her in terms of her career in sales. Enter LinkedIn. She got on board with LinkedIn only because she was desperate to find other solutions to solve for the struggles that she was having. And she truly embraced LinkedIn and as well as social selling. And she did this by creating a complete profile. She did this by investing and connecting with tons of folks, in the end having over 2,500 connections. She did this by leveraging our ability to find the right prospect and find insights that she can use to engage with them, and had some remarkable turnaround story. She says this herself in that, LinkedIn has changed my life. It's enabled me to excel in a world where I was otherwise an underdog. And you can see how incredible transformation it is. She has an SSI score of 87, which is quite high. As I mentioned, is a score out of 100. And she is actually now one of the trainers at Comcast for new employees that are struggling, so she can share her story and how that makes her successful as an individual sales rep. So we believe social selling is transforming individuals to be far more successful in their goals as sales professionals. We also see amazing success with organizations themselves. So here's a story from PayPal Australia. Paul, who's the head of sales at PayPal Australia, has embraced social selling in his organization and also embraced Sales Navigator. And what they've found is that at this point, 85% of their net new opportunities start with LinkedIn. They're sourced from LinkedIn, they're researched from LinkedIn, they're influenced by LinkedIn. And that's an incredible stat at how important they believe social selling is to their journey and to being successful in social sales. So I wanted to actually talk about folks in the room today here. We have your social selling scores up here. This was kind of based on the initial attendee list. And you can see a bunch of folks here that are actually doing incredibly well already at social selling. You have folks like Sulman, John Bell, Stephen Dunbar, Tina, and Brendan at a variety of firms, Travelers, AXA, McKay, Manulife. We're already starting to see success of social selling amongst folks in a variety of sectors and verticals, financial services, obviously tech, and many others. So I wanted to switch gears and talk a little bit about how LinkedIn thinks about social selling and our solutions. So when we think about social selling, we talk about this idea that our mission on the LinkedIn Sales Solutions team is really to help connect the world's buyers and sellers to build relationships. Everything we do, we believe, is all about relationships. You heard me talk this morning about LinkedIn's overall mission, which is all about connecting. And in this case, for Sales Solutions, it's about those connections between buyers and sellers. And for us, it's incredibly important to really manage both sides of that relationship. Because when done right, we believe that social selling is going to be incredibly valuable, not only for sales professionals, to help them find their ultimate goal, to help them actually be far more successful in closing business. But in the success case, we actually think this will be transformative for buyers as well. When we talk about our ultimate vision for Sales Solutions, we talk about this idea of elevating the sales profession. What that means to us is that we want to change kind of the way that people perceive sales professionals. We still have folks in kind of the buyer community that think of that used car salesman when they're thinking about sales professionals. They think about the unsolicited inquiries that you're getting. But what we really believe in and what we think we can enable is really thinking of sales professionals as consultants that are helping you accelerate your own business goals through a set of solutions that they can provide. And those unsolicited inquiries become incredibly valuable when they drop a note to you describing exactly how they might be able to help you to solve your challenges as a business decision maker. And that's the goal of what we're trying to do. We try to do this with Sales Navigator. And so let me talk a bit about exactly how we manifest this in our solution. So Sales Navigator, you'll see in a few minutes here, enables you to take advantage of a few different things. First, finding the right people. We talked quite a bit about how core this is to social selling. This idea that you want to pinpoint the right decision maker within the organization that has real pain points that your products and services are going to be able to solve for. And this is where we can take advantage of the 350 million professionals that we have on our network, whether it's business decision makers, whether it's high net worth individuals, whether it's anyone that might be interested in your products and services. And that gives you an incredible asset that you can bring to bear that's always up to date with information provided by members themselves who are putting their best foot forward for their own professional careers. We also help you stay informed in terms of helping you understand the things you need to know to walk into that meeting with a potential customer with the insights that are relevant to them. We all know that we should be doing research before we go into any client interaction. Yet it's a lot of work. There's lots of places we have to look, do our Google searches, go to the company website, so many different things. And what we're trying to do with Sales Navigator is simplify it so we can give you one dashboard to really understand all of the insights that you need to understand in that organization. Whether it's understanding the org chart through understanding job changes that are happening, whether it's understanding the pain points and things that they're interested in with company in the news and people mentioned in the news or shares that are happening, or whether it's getting your conversation fodder when you first meet with someone to really understand how you relate to them. Maybe you went to the same alma mater. Maybe you have connections in common. We're going to help you stay informed and build that context that you need to be far more successful in your relationship. And finally, we're going to help you build trust. Build trust through warm relationships. And we're going to leverage the billions of connections that we have available to us on LinkedIn to help you find that exact right warm path in. Again, not only from your connections, but as Stephen will show you, through extending your network through TeamLink to your entire organization. Great, so I hope this gives you kind of a quick setup of social selling, what it is and why we care a lot about it. I think the most important part now is to give you guys a real tour and understanding of how you might use Sales Navigator to far more effectively do social sales. And I'm going to invite up Stephen Kaplan, product manager on the sales solutions team, to actually just walk us through a demo.
All right, thanks, Sachin. So this is our first Finance Connect, and super excited to give you folks a quick demo of the new Sales Navigator. Frank, can we switch to the Mac? So before I get started, I wanted to give you folks just a bit of context and taking a moment to pause on LinkedIn.com. Now, LinkedIn.com, as we've spoken about today, is a great way to really focus on me and my relationships. It's a wonderful way to stay connected with colleagues and coworkers, find and share relevant professional content, or even find that next job. But as an outbound sales professional, what I really want to focus on are the customers and prospects that are most important to my business. Now, when I flip over to the new Sales Navigator, what you'll notice is a much different view of the world. This is a standalone experience separate from LinkedIn.com where we wanted to build an experience entirely focused on the sales professional. Now, when I look in the upper right here, you'll notice that I have 27 accounts and 110 leads saved in Sales Navigator. Before I came here on stage today, what I actually did is I connected Sales Navigator to my Salesforce CRM, and what it's doing is it's reaching into my CRM, it's looking at the customers and opportunities that I'm working on, and then it's starting to match those with the company and member profiles on LinkedIn that are most relevant to me. What I've also done is I've set up a set of sales preferences. So for the purposes of the demo today, I'm going to assume that I'm an outbound sales professional selling security and compliance solutions into the financial services vertical. And so what I've done is I've set my region as the New York City area. My industry is financial services. I typically like to deal with the IT and legal departments. And the seniority levels are typically director level and above types of folks that I'll engage with. Now, as Sachin mentioned, Sales Navigator is a great way to stay informed and up to date. And what you're seeing in the stream here really is a much more filtered, tailored stream of insights, focusing again on those accounts and leads that I care about. And we break the insights down into a couple different types of buckets, and I'll walk you through a few of those today. The first is leads and company shares, and this is very similar to what you might see on LinkedIn.com. This is thoughts and articles and links and things that people are sharing out publicly on LinkedIn.com from their member or company profile pages. And it's a great way to really get a sense of what's top of mind for these buyers and what's going on in their business. Another type of insight that we give you in Sales Navigator is lead updates. And lead updates really is looking at all the different changes to people's profiles on LinkedIn.com. Again, that 350 million member base. And what it's starting to identify are the relevant job title changes that you might care about in these accounts and the leads that you're prospecting into. And so I can see here that Thales at Citi has now become an enterprise data architect. And this is great for me as a sales professional because it's not only an opportunity for me to reach out to Thales and congratulate him, but it's also an opportunity to start to re-engage with him as his new scope of responsibility might be relevant for the products and services that I'm selling. If I scroll down a bit, I'll also see a couple other types of insights. We can notice that we also have this type of insight called mentions in the news. And mentions in the news is very similar to the shares that you might see where people are sharing articles and content that's relevant to their business. But this is really where one of your leads is actually mentioned in a news story. And so you could think of this very similar to if you went onto one of these sites where you get alerted of relevant news about a given company. But in this case, it's hyper relevant to me. It's hyper relevant to Mark Gordon, the CIO of American Express, somebody that I'm prospecting into. And I can see that he's mentioned in a PR Newswire article about good technology, and it's really another great way for me to stay informed and up to date on Mark. And then the final type of insight that I'll just quickly walk you through are potential leads. Now, as we know, these organizations they're very dynamic organizations, constantly changing, people moving in and out of roles. And so what we wanted to do in Sales Navigator is start to bring some of those new potential leads to you as opposed to just making you go out and search for them on an ongoing basis manually. And so again, given those preferences that I specified earlier, I noticed that Steve Klein is now in the Corporate Governance and Transactions group at AIG. And this is a role that's very relevant given the preferences, and it's hyper relevant to the account AIG that I'm selling into. So as I'm trying to build trust and relationships within that account, this is a really timely insight that Sales Navigator is able to bring directly to me. So that's a little bit about how Sales Navigator helps you stay informed and up to date with your customers and prospects. And I'd like to show you a few examples of how it helps you find the right people. Now, as Sachin mentioned, LinkedIn.com has over 350 million members, and this is a great source as you're looking for new potential leads and people that you want to build relationships with in the accounts that you're prospecting into. But what we wanted to do in Sales Navigator is really help you focus on the right people and give you more powerful tools for building lead lists. And the feature that we actually came up with in Sales Navigator is called Lead Builder. And so I'll start a search right now with compliance or security professionals. And I'll set my location to New York. And what you'll notice is that as I'm updating the criteria here, the number of results and the number of leads that are coming into my lead list is actually narrowing down. And so I can start to get a sense of how large or small that list is in terms of manageability. I typically sell into the IT departments, and we'll deal with VP level or higher. And then I'll set my industry, again, as financial services. Now, when I do this search, you'll start to see all the great data and all the potential new leads that come back from LinkedIn. And I'm going to walk you through these. But before I do, we showed you a few examples earlier of how LinkedIn brings some of these insights to you. What I can actually do with this search is I can actually save this. And once I save it, Sales Navigator is actually going to go out and it's going to start to give me regular updates, either on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, so that, again, I'm not having to come back in here all the time and continuously run this search. Now, when we look through the results here, you'll see that we have a number of great people that are showing up in the results, but a lot of them are third-degree connections, and this means that they are connections of my connections' connections. So not the easiest people in the world to necessarily get a warm path in. I might have to jump through a bunch of hoops or send a cold email. It may not be the most effective way for me to be starting my prospecting. But what we do in Sales Navigator is we actually give you a powerful filter here called Team Link, which allows you to filter this down not only to the connections that are connected through your network, but also all the other salespeople within your company. And I'm on the LinkedIn contract here, and so what it's doing is it's starting to identify people that I'm connected through my LinkedIn coworkers. So I see that Jonas is in the IT risk and cybersecurity department at Wells Fargo, and I'll load up his profile to just get a bit more information. Now, what you see on the page is very similar to what you might see on a member profile on LinkedIn.com. But we'll point out on the right here the Team Link module, which actually helps you better understand what that warm path in is. And I noticed that Jordan Young on our partner team actually worked with Jonas back in 2012 and 2013 at Citi. And so this is great because, as Sachin mentioned, getting that warm path in makes it 5 times more likely that I'm able to get that first meeting. And so using Team Link, I'm able not only to leverage my own connections, but the connections of everybody else at my company to be as effective as possible. Now I'm going to save Jonas as a lead so I can start to get some tailored insights about him and what's going on with his group. And as we know, as sales professionals, you actually don't just care about Jonas and influencing and building a relationship with Jonas, but I actually want to start building relationships with all the people in or around him at Wells Fargo. And so what Sales Navigator is doing at the top here with our lead recommendations is it's actually starting to give me recommendations about the key people that I would want to stay in touch with at Wells Fargo. So I'll save a few of these as leads. And simply by saving a few of these as leads, what I've now really done is I've started to build up the Wells Fargo account within Sales Navigator. And this is a unique feature to Sales Navigator, which we call account-centric views. So this is very similar to what you might see on LinkedIn.com in terms of getting the company details. But really, if you look at the insight stream, again, it's focused on just Wells Fargo and those handful of different leads and people that I've identified as key decision makers that I want to start prospecting into at Wells Fargo. So the same types of insights that we saw earlier, but now it's focused on this account and the leads that I care about most. And if we kind of bubble up to an account level at Wells Fargo, what we're also starting to do, again, given the preferences that we showed you earlier, we're able to help you find other people within the organization that you may want to start to build and nurture relationships with. And so we do this through a few different modules here. The first being lead recommendations. And so this is showing me people within the compliance and the security groups within Wells Fargo. And I see Troy's in the information security group, so I'll save him. I'm also able to look at my own connections, both first, second, and third degree connections, and start to understand potential connections that will help me out. And then finally, if I kind of look at the connections of my company, in this case LinkedIn, I'm also able to start to understand how I can leverage the connections of LinkedIn employees and how they can better help me prospect into Wells Fargo. So really bringing all that, all these insights and all this data that we have to bear and doing it in a very easy, intuitive way as you can build up those account-centric views. So I hope that gives you a good sense of how Sales Navigator works within our standalone experience on the web. And what I'd like to do quickly is flip over to how we actually surface some of this directly within your CRM system. And we know that salespeople, no matter where you are in the sales cycle, are going to be working within your CRM system. So what we wanted to do on the contact record in CRM is actually give you the same richness of all that Sales Navigator insights, both the member and the company profile. And we've actually delivered this as embeddable widgets that are right within your CRM system. In this case, it's on the contact form, and I get all the same insights about Yonacy, how we're connected with TeamLink, as well as the company profile and suggestions of other people to reach out to. And we not only put this on the contact form, but we also put it on the account form, the lead form, as well as the opportunity form. So no matter where you are in the sales process, you're able to get the same richness of Sales Navigator right within your CRM. And then the last thing I'll show you before I move on is actually a sneak preview of something we've never shown publicly until today. And what we've been working on the last few months and we're very close to releasing is the same integration that I just showed you in Salesforce.com, now within Microsoft Dynamics. And so on the opportunity form here, again, I can see the same LinkedIn member profile details of Yonacy, as well as the company details of Wells Fargo and all the richness of Sales Navigator right within Microsoft Dynamics. So, Frank, can we flip back to the slides, please? So just to wrap up with the desktop portion, then we'll move on to mobile. You saw this notion of account-centric views within Sales Navigator and really giving you a much better way of staying on top of the key insights and people at those accounts. You saw the account and contact import and how we really tailored that experience to be personalized for me and my accounts that I'm working into. Lead recommendations and a few different examples and really bringing those potential leads to you. Actionable insights and TeamLink to really give you better ways of staying informed, up to date, and getting those warm paths in to build trust. And then finally taking all of that and delivering it to you not only in the standalone experience in Sales Navigator, but also within your Salesforce and soon Microsoft Dynamics. So the last portion that I'm going to go through today, Frank, can we flip over to AirPlay? Is how all of this surfaces on mobile. And what we know is that a lot of sales professionals, especially outbound sales professionals, are always on the go. And we really wanted to start to bring some of the same value that we showed you on the desktop right on mobile, wherever you are, whenever you want it. So LinkedIn, as you'll see in a number of different sessions, we are pursuing a multi-app strategy. And again, we really want to make sure that every app is very heavily focused on the key use cases and tasks for that audience. So with Sales Navigator, we actually have our own standalone application. And a lot of the functionality here is very similar to what you just saw on the desktop, only we've brought it to you on your mobile phone. So I can see here the same type of insight stream, again, focused on the accounts and leads that I care about most. I can drill into my full list of accounts and get all the details on any of those at any time. Similarly, my full list of leads and all the different folks that I've been saving in Sales Navigator. And one thing that we didn't cover within the web experience, but we do give you full access to your LinkedIn inbox, your Sales Navigator inbox, as you're sending those emails, as you're asking for those warm introductions. We want to make sure that you have all of that in your work inbox separate from your personal inbox. So let's say I'm about to go into a meeting with Wells Fargo. I might load up the account here. Again, keeping me up to date on all the key insights and things that are going on with that account before I go in. And you know what? I actually just want to drill in and I want to find out a bit more about Jonasi and what's top of mind for him. And so I can drill straight into his lead profile, straight within the mobile experience. And you know what? I want to name drop a bit and kind of put a bit of an icebreaker in the conversation. So I just wanted to remind myself of any potential connections that we might have. And I can see that I have full access to TeamLink here and that Jordan is a person that I might want to bring up in conversation to help kind of break the ice as we're in our meeting. So that's a quick lap on the mobile experience for Sales Navigator. Frank, can we go back to the slides? Thanks. And just to recap on what you saw, actionable insights and all the key account and lead updates that we show you on the Sales Navigator standalone experience now on your mobile device. We showed you TeamLink and being able to use that in a very mobile setting when you're on the go. Similarly, getting full access into your accounts, leads, and your Sales Navigator inbox as you're communicating with customers and other teammates for those warm paths in. So I hope in the last 15 minutes I was able to give you a good sense of the product and some of the key features and functionality. And with this, I'm going to hand it off back to Sachin, who's going to take it home.
Great. All right. Thanks, you, Stephen. So just to wrap up, I wanted to spend a few minutes here talking about kind of the direction of where we're headed with Sales Solutions and Sales Navigator. Because what you see here is just the beginning of what we are super excited about with the Sales Navigator platform and the solutions we'll be able to build on top of it. So when we think about our aspiration for what we want to do with Sales Navigator, our goal is to create a solution that can really be the start of every sales opportunity. When you're thinking about looking for net new opportunities, or you're thinking about nurturing existing accounts to become bigger, we want Sales Navigator to really be the tool of choice to make that happen. And when we think about enabling this, there's three key pillars that we're squarely focused on to make this happen. The first is to be the definitive social selling dashboard. What we mean by this is this idea that you could come to Sales Navigator and get all the insights that you need to know right now to be successful. You saw a lot of that in the product today, but we think there's even new insight types that we can provide that are going to be far more effective and even more valuable in unlocking an understanding of what's going on with your accounts, what's the triggers and information you need to know that's going to enable you to figure out the right time to reach out to the right prospect. Another incredibly important part of social selling is this idea that it's not just about Sales Navigator, but it requires an entire program to actually be created within your organization to do it well. To do social selling well requires thinking through how you're going to send that incredibly tailored in-mail that's personalized, that goes in warm with a warm introduction. And what we want to do is make the tool set self-educating in itself, to help guide people through their journey of social selling and give them prescriptive guidance depending on where they are in their own journey of social selling to make them far more effective. And so we have lots of plans on how in the product we're going to make it even more effortless to get up to speed on leveraging this new way of selling in an effortless way. And finally, our goal is to connect the dots between sales and marketing. So we know that there's an amazing amount of alignment and convergence happening today between sales and marketing. And we know that when folks are thinking about especially their overall B2B sales funnel, it starts with marketing helping to nurture and eventually acquire leads that the sales team then can actually leverage. And our hope is to bring these two worlds together in a more meaningful way. And we're starting to think through the right solutions that can enable sales and marketing to effortlessly prospect and then nurture those leads in exciting new ways. And so we'll keep you posted as those developments happen, kind of along these lines. So great, so that kind of wraps us up. We got a quick overview of what is social selling. We talked a bit about why we think social selling is the future, got a chance to see the product, and talked a bit about where we're heading. So I wanted to pause for a few moments here to see if there's any questions that people have for Stephen and I, or really anyone from LinkedIn.
Could you talk a little bit more about the integration? So if you do a LinkedIn mail from within the LinkedIn Sales Navigator, does that get recorded as an activity in the CRM? That's
Yeah.
like one question around integration strategy. And then the second thing is, if we're in a niche market, let's say we're not using like a big CRM system, we have a niche CRM system, are you guys going to expose the Sales Navigator in a pure API mode where perhaps we could integrate with the CRM but not have to train people on a new interface?
Yeah, great question. So let me hit kind of what our integration strategy is with existing CRM solutions. So today, as Stephen mentions, we integrate deeply with Salesforce in two different ways. The first is within the Salesforce environment, we bring LinkedIn member data into it via the contact and account widgets, which give you real-time, up-to-date information right within Salesforce of information of what's going on with those accounts and contacts. The other side of the integration actually brings Salesforce data into Sales Navigator. And so this is the idea of importing your list of accounts and leads that you already have within Salesforce into the actual environment within Sales Navigator, so that you can quickly get insights about your accounts and leads. Simply by adding the accounts in Salesforce, they automatically get added into the tool set. So those are the two ends of the spectrum we have today. From within the Salesforce integration, you can actually do a variety of activities. From the contact widget, you can in-mail them, you can send them a connection request. We don't yet actually translate that into an activity record within Salesforce, but certainly a frequent request that we're hearing and something we're starting to think about. In terms of our strategy, today we integrate with Salesforce. As Stephen mentioned, we're soon going to be announcing a similar integration with Microsoft Dynamics that actually takes advantage of the new Sales Navigator. We already have a pre-existing integration with Dynamics as well. We do not have a solution to date for other homebrew CRM solutions, and we actually don't have an API. The thing to keep in mind, though, is part of the reason we don't have an API is actually to ensure that we can adhere to our members first policy as a company and as a culture. We want to ensure that at every step of the way, we're respecting the members' privacy and the members' data. So you'll notice that when this data is actually put into Salesforce via the widget, if a member decides to remove their profile, update that profile, that gets updated in real time into Salesforce, which enables us to maintain the trust of our members as they're doing this. Our worry is if we get to a pure export, then it would enable, it would cause members to lose a bit of control in that experience.
Retaining, so regulated by FINRA and SEC, so I'm sending in mails and private messages, need to retain it.
Yeah.
How are you doing that?
Great question. So we have a full-on compliance program. You'll hear a bit more about compliance and sort of the subtleties there. But we have a compliance program that actually integrates with a variety of compliance partners to enable you to actually ensure that you can archive every message, every social gesture, every action that's happening, including profile edits, both across activity that's happening on LinkedIn, but also activity that's happening in Sales Navigator. So when those inbox messages are being sent or even the replies are being received, our compliance partners actually enable you to actually stay regulated and have that archived. Things
And
like
we work with Hearsay.
that's right.
Socialware,
Hearsay, Socialware, Actiance. We have a whole slew of partners that we integrate with and all support the Sales Navigator offering that we have today.
But one thing that's not brought over, which we hear is not in the API, is if I send a private message or an in-mail with an attachment, the attachment doesn't come over, which in the regulated world, we have to have that in a 17A4 compliance system.
Yeah, so Sales Navigator today doesn't actually support having attachments when you send an in-mail message. And so they're not archived because we don't have that support yet. It is something we're looking at, but when we do add the attachment support specifically in Sales Navigator, we'll look to add compliance support.
What about in just the native LinkedIn application, though? You do allow attachments.
Yeah, so I don't know the details of why that's not archived, but let's definitely follow up to touch base on that.
Okay, thanks.
All right, cool. So I'm going to pause here. We'll have plenty of time for additional questions throughout the day. So we're going to take a little break here, but before we do so, I just want to talk about the next session that we're going to have. As I mentioned, I'm going to invite up Jamie Brill, who leads our sales solutions business in the financial services sector, and is going to actually conduct a fireside chat with some existing customers of social selling and Sales Navigator to hear their stories, successes, challenges, and things like that. So we'll look forward to that. Let's take a quick 10-minute break and then be back here at 4:05. Thank you.